Lessons. Yes, yes. So we are going to do this. I think I'm going to divert from my normal, from the list that I had in mind in this 9-part series. I really had, oh, thank you for all the hearts. I really had a vision of, of touching on very specific topics. But just in light of the formula crisis that we're experiencing right now, I decided this was a great time. And it's actually in perfect alignment. I'm ready to print my book. This book right here, Love and Lactation, right? I know if any of you do follow me on IG, you may have seen some of the posts that's been going up. And one day I'm going to do a video just to talk about the challenges that I had to publish this book. It has been incredible, it has been an incredible journey. But this book here will be dedicated, or it is dedicated, to one of my very first birth assistants. Her name was Shifra. She was also an IBCLC. If you don't know what that is, that's Internationally Board Certified Lactation Consultant. And she transitioned in July of 2020 after the birth of her twins here in Atlanta. So that was a phenomenal story. Her husband actually wrote the foreword. There's only 200 copies of this book. And then that will be it. After that, I've decided that every time I do a new print of this book, I'm going to do a dedicated edition to another mother that has transitioned as a result of maternal health crisis. So it will become a collector's edition. So this is the first one in the that series. I've already sold, I want to say, a good 50 of those books. So I'm down to 150, and I will be giving away one tonight. So we will be talking about breastfeeding and the formula crisis. If you know somebody that's pregnant or having challenges with formula issues right now, this would be a good time to tag them and have them plug in. As you know, I don't post these IG lives. I do send the information over to, oh, thank you. Yes, this weekend was amazing. But I don't post these IG lives. I edit them, and then eventually I will release them to YouTube. So the goal has been to release one a week on YouTube. And y'all know anything about this birth work, y'all. It's we do all the things. You are an entrepreneur. You're your accountant, you're the secretary, you're the PR person, you're the social media manager, you're doing it all, right? And you're attending birth. So it's a lot to manage for one person to handle. And I do have a team. Shout out to my team, the Love and Touch team. Two of my daughters are on my team. I have a PA and an EA, y'all, and they do great work for me. They do help manage my social media when they can in between their own lives. And they help in other ways as well to keep Birth Mama Stakisa on her toes. Shout out to them. Mm. Yes. So the formula crisis. I'm gonna be perfectly transparent. I gather most of my media, my news, sadly, and from social media and people around me. I don't really watch the news, and that's not to discount anyone that does. I think there's a my head is just so full of so much other information. I do my absolute best to censor my joy, right? And then just sometimes the news intentionally wants to rob you from your joy. So a lot of the information that I'm gathering in these meetings that I attend with social justice workers, birth justice workers, reproductive justice workers, people that are in that field, I'm hearing so many different things that this crisis may sustain for another 2 months at minimum. We do have a phenomenal journalist now for the Atlanta Doula Collective that wrote an article that gave a backstory, and I was able to, abreast myself on the current crisis through just her report. But my intention this evening isn't so much to talk about those things. It's really just to bring about some solutions and to help families who are struggling right now. The debate is real. The controversy is hot, right? Everybody can't breastfeed. What about my baby? People are price gouging formula. I'm being told they're hoarding formula. I mean, it's insane to hear. I fortunately haven't really seen it, But it's certainly unfortunate to hear these things are happening. I actually used to work for WIC, Women, Infant, Children, back in 2010, and I worked there for about 3 years. And shout out to WIC. I mean, it is what it is. If it wasn't for WIC, I wouldn't have became a lactation consultant. I don't think I would have, because lactation work wasn't on my radar. I was really more focused on midwifery and other birth work at the time. So, but yeah, I just went into WIC one day when my children were young. I went in there to pick up my WIC vouchers. And when they learned that I was a breastfeeding mom, they literally offered me a job. And that job was a breastfeeding peer counselor. And so I did that, like I said, for about 3 years. It was a very enriching opportunity. And I encourage anyone that is breastfeeding, if you're a stay-at-home mom, it's a great way to gain some additional income, some additional experience. That field right there seems to always be, hiring. And there's different counties that offer it. They go by counties. Every WIC department will have, I believe, about 2 to 4 WIC breastfeeding peer counselors. So that's a whole job right there. Somebody says, I think people have become too depending on formula and not enough credit to themselves on breast milk and believing in themselves. I have to agree with you. I was actually just in a meeting, which is part of the reason why I was late this evening to do this IG live, this YouTube live. I was in a meeting, and I fact checked me on this because I've never heard such a thing. But one of the ladies in the meeting spoke to a sister, a relative that she has in Germany, and they actually receive $100 a month. They pay their citizens to breastfeed. So if you're a breastfeeding mother, I don't know if it's a social um, program that they have, like our food stamps and Medicaid or whatnot. But yeah, she was like, in Germany, they pay their citizens to actually breastfeed, and that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Our crisis, and I will say, from what I saw as I worked for WIC, the challenges that Black communities face, and that was predominantly who we served over here in Clayton County, Georgia, um, was really social. So many mothers had to go back to work. I think the work relationship was the greatest barrier for many women that wanted to breastfeed. That and just straight up hospital sabotage. I'm gonna call it what it is. If it's a chicken, I'm gonna call it a chicken, right? I saw and I still do see, even though we have what's considered to be baby friendly hospitals, and I think that's still a thing. I mean, I don't go into hospitals like I did when I was a doula, but during the time I was working for WIC, onward into, I would say, 2016-ish, 2017, several hospitals were petitioning to become baby friendly. And that's a certain model where they're supposed to actually honor the golden hour of birth, where they initiate breastfeeding, do rooming in for the babies, and don't present formula to the mother unless it's upon request. They're not supposed to like add formula to the rolling cart or the bassinet, that plastic bassinet that they roll into the room. They're supposed to have more lactation support on staff to help with breastfeeding. And, you know, hey, shout out to those hospitals that have honored the baby friendly model. I think it was more of, in my experience, I've seen it more of a theory than in practice, sadly. I don't do as much lactation work as I used to now that I'm in doing midwifery. But I honestly can say I saw a lot of hospital sabotage. I did run lactation clinic for three practices, an OB practice, and actually four. It was two OB practices. Just one of them I didn't stay as long. Two OB practices and two midwifery practices. And I ran lactation clinic for them. And I can, like I said, hospital sabotage and breastfeeding is real. So if you know anybody, or if you are a person that is you're intending to breastfeed your child, there's some, I definitely encourage you to attend a breastfeeding class. I think breastfeeding is not censored enough in America. I think formula is we're so codependent on formula that we don't really consider breastfeeding as a viable option. We know that breast is best, and we have all these narratives that we share about breastfeeding. But this is why I took a whole different approach with my book. I don't talk about breast is best. I talk about the risks that you experience when you don't breastfeed, right? I think so many times that we get caught up in, oh, well, I was formula fed and I was fine. You'll never know the full capacity. And I think that about myself. My mother did not breastfeed me. I breastfed all four of my children. Um, but I will never know the full capacity of what I could have been if I was breastfed. I'll never understand if even some of the minor health challenges that I face from time to time is a result of the fact that I was not breastfed. Because we understand now how much breast milk really reinforces the immune system. It really enhances the body in every way you can think of, from the brain to the toes. Your body is further enhanced and fortified on breast milk. And I know that it gets controversial. People want to say that, oh, we want to lift up and we want to acknowledge and not offend those people who have had challenges with breastfeeding. And with all due respect to them, we cannot overshadow those experiences and those women that have and that do choose to breastfeed. It is not easy. I will tell you that. Some women I have seen have far more success with breastfeeding than others. It is a lifestyle. Like birth work, breastfeeding, it is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle change. It is a commitment. It is not conducive for the American lifestyle. It's not one of those things that you can just easily do and go back to how you were living before you had children. It really and thoroughly is a different kind of commitment. You're nursing this baby several times a day, all throughout the day. If you have a newborn baby, you can breastfeed that baby up to 30 minutes to an hour every 2 to 3 hours, right? Until this baby builds their breathe, suck, swallow coordination. That's something we take for granted, right? And this is one of the things I think that inhibits or interferes, is a better word for it, the actual latching and breastfeeding experience. So many times we don't honor the fact that the baby has to learn how to breathe and the baby has to learn how to eat, because they've never done that before. Remember, they were being fed through their umbilical cord. They never had to do those things. So that's a whole process that they have to master. Breathe, suck, swallow. Something we take for granted. I can sit here and drink and talk and swallow and with no issues. But babies really do have to focus, and it requires a lot of patience for them to be able to do that. And so many times mothers will think that they're not producing enough milk because it's taking the baby 30 minutes to an hour to latch on and complete a feed. But when in actuality, they're breathing half of that time. If you pay attention to a newborn baby, once they latch onto the breast, a lot of that time, they're just breathing. They suck a little bit and then they breathe. And then they suck a little bit and then they breathe, right? And that's how they are learning. And over time, as they build muscle memory, and they master the art of breathe, suck, swallow, their feedings become a lot shorter. By the time they're 2 weeks to 3 weeks old, and in some cases it may take them as long as a month, their feedings may be as short as 15 minutes. Hence the whole 15-minute rule that a lot of people still subscribe to. The 15-minute rule is self-sabotage. That really should only be applied to a breast pump. Right. And so let's speak to that about breast pumping, because you have people out here now that want to relactate in response to this crisis. Let me see. It says, yes, I have worked on a mother baby unit that implemented a breastfeeding aid at night. Yes, she worked from 7 to 7. That's great, because a lot of hospitals do not have anybody there at night to help breastfeed. But yeah, going back to the pumping. So when you do decide to pump your breast, right, for milk, you want to follow the milk ejection reflex. So I was speaking to one of my moms the other day, who I will hopefully see real soon again, who was attempting to pump, but she said, I pumped for a whole hour. And I've heard this so many times. I pumped for a whole hour and I only got I think she said maybe 2 ounces or 3 ounces, something like that. That is traumatizing to your breast. Pumping for an hour is going to traumatize your nipples, and it's going to cause pain to your breast potentially, right? That's not what we want to do. You want to look at what's called the milk ejection reflex, right? And that's when certain vessels around or muscles is a better word, around your mammary glands contract, and they help the milk to actually express out. And so for most women, that's about a good 5 to 7 minutes into a pump. Anywhere from, I would say, 3 to 5. I'll bring that back in. Because if you have a breast pump and you notice that most pumps have what's called a stimulation suck. And then so when you press that button, the stimulation suck will suck very rapidly. But that's to mimic a baby. When you first put a baby on the breast, they tend to have a rapid suck. They're sucking very rapidly or consistently. And then once your milk ejection reflex kicks in, which again for some women can be as long as 5 minutes of stimulation, you will notice that the milk starts to come out either in a spray, right? Because the actual nipple has several pores on it that the milk is coming out of. It's not just one hole like on a bottle, right? A breast nipple has several pores on it that the milk is dispensing from. And so it comes out in a spray. And one of the reasons that we acknowledged why that spray is necessary, because it helps to rinse out the baby's sinus cavity and prevent ear infections. I couldn't tell you how many ear infections I saw when I worked for WIC. It was so many babies in there with tubes in their ears because of ear infections. Well, that's one of the benefits of breastfeeding. They have very few encounters with ear infections, and it really is attributed to the spraying action that the milk has. It sprays all those antibiotics, antifungals, antimicrobial properties is sprayed all throughout the baby's sinus cavities, and it helps to prevent ear infections. And then, so what you will notice again is the milk will start to come out in a spray type of form, or it'll come out in a rapid drip. It might go from a slow drip to a rapid drip. Someone says pumping for an hour will make the nipples really sore. Yes, it will. We do not want to pump for an hour. You want to pay attention to the milk ejection reflex. And so what I'm saying is, you watch your once you attach the pumps, you're going to see that it's going to start dripping, and then it'll start either spraying or rapidly dripping. And then after some time, that might be upwards of 10 minutes to 15 minutes, it goes back to just a slow drip. That's when you stop. And so you watch the pump, not the clock. Just like when you want to understand how long your baby should be on the breast, you watch your baby, not the clock, right? Don't watch the clock. Don't pay attention to how long you've been on there. You pay attention to your breast, because I've seen women pump as much as 3 to 4 ounces in 7 minutes, y'all. Some women breasts are phenomenal, and it doesn't make a difference what size your breasts are. Size does not count when it comes to breast milk production. I will be perfectly honest, as I've run clinic, like I said, for several years, I have actually seen women with larger breasts, very, very large breasts, have more issues than I have women with smaller breasts. And it's not necessarily a milk issue. It's typically a flat nipple issue where the nipple is too flat. They have a very large breast, but the nipple is very flat at the end, or the breast is very large and they have difficulty actually fitting it, positioning themselves to nurse the baby. So I've seen more issues like that with very large chested women than I have with smaller chests. So size doesn't matter. They grow to accommodate the amount of milk supply you need to feed your baby. And on the topic of supply, I don't even have a list, y'all. I'm just rolling right now. I usually have my little checklist I go down. I'm just rolling as the thoughts come to me. But on the topic of supply, I would have to say that has to be the second most popular reason why women quit breastfeeding. And I would say it's worldwide, because I have traveled. I've done mission trips in Uganda, a mission trip in Uganda, and I did a mission trip in the Dominican Republic. And I swear to you, it seemed like the same narrative. Women think they don't make enough milk. And it is astounding to me how you can think you don't make enough milk. You just created, or co-created, I should say, this whole human being that you pushed out your body. Brain, heart, nervous system, liver, lungs. Your body was so dynamic that it co-created all of this. Why do you think making milk would be an issue? Oh my goodness. Theoretically, the average mother can produce enough milk to feed a small play group. Most women produce more milk than their bodies can handle within the first 2 weeks. After the first 2 weeks, the body goes into what's called lactogenesis 2, or the second stage of lactation. And this is just science, right? Every woman is different. I always respect individuality, okay? But what science tells us is after the placenta is fully expelled from your body, it triggers the body to go into the second stage of lactation. And this is why most women will make milk for at least 2 weeks. I don't care what herb you take. I don't care if you bind your breast down with tape. You're going to make milk for about 2 weeks after you have a baby before it completely starts to dry up. And this is because of that second stage of lactation. It is not supply and demand in that phase. During that first couple of weeks, the body is producing milk based on the trigger that the placenta triggered the body to go into that second stage of lactation. And this is why if you have any retained placenta in your body, for one, you're most likely going to hemorrhage or bleed too much. But then also you will notice with those women that there's a delay in their breast milk production. Now, I also want to honor women who have had C-sections or traumatic birth experiences, because I have definitely seen in those situations where there is also a delay of that second stage of lactation. Right? If you've lost a lot of blood in your birth, or you had a very traumatic birth, and whatever that looks like for you, your body goes into self-preservation, right? It's not going to sustain this baby because it's struggling to sustain you. And so once your blood volumes are back to normal, or at least increased enough, because breast milk is created based on our blood. It's a blood, it's birthed from our blood, right? It's created from our blood supply. So once your body has built up enough blood to actually produce the milk, then you will have it. And again, that's for women that have had traumatic birth experiences, or those women that have lost a lot of blood in their birth. They may notice a delay in their mature milk coming in. Now, the mature milk typically will come in about 72 hours after birth. And again, that's a loose rule. Some women will get their mature milk within 24 to 48 hours. I have seen it, right? And this is a biological process that is in perfect harmony with the size of the baby's belly. Your baby's belly at birth cannot hold an ounce of milk. Now, I know it's argumentative. I've had mamas tell me, oh, my baby drink an ounce, and they hold it down. But if it's an ounce, I promise you it's not breast milk, unless it's somebody else's breast milk. It didn't come from their body, because your body not even making an ounce of breast milk. You're making colostrum, and colostrum comes out in drips. And colostrum is very significant to the growth of your baby. Your baby needs that colostrum because, one, it has a laxative in it to help your baby have their very first bowel movements. What is that first bowel movement called? I tell you what, the first person to tell me the name of that first bowel movement a baby has, I would give them this book. It's called Feed Your Infant for Free and Lose Weight. This book is by Bunya Broadnax. She and I released books at the same time a few years ago when I released my When Birth Calls book. So meconium, that's right. Facilitate wellness. Please DM me your address, and I'll mail you this book. I love it. Yay. You better say it. And who is that? The Exquisite Midwife. That's right. That first bowel movement, it was meconium, and the colostrum has a laxative in it to help your babies push out that meconium. Right? It's very important. It is the first booster shot that your baby will have. It's loaded with antibiotics in it to help your baby start to build their immune system. So never underestimate colostrum. When I worked for WIC, there were some cultures that believed that colostrum was bad for the baby. And they would borrow breast milk in their culture and not give the baby the colostrum. And that cannot be further from the truth. That's right. Colostrum is liquid gold. It is loaded with everything your baby needs. It even has a beta carotene in it to help your baby prevent jaundice, right? Jaundice, about 80% of newborn babies experience some degree of physiological jaundice. That's the yellowish hue that we see in their eye, in their bodies. Sometimes it makes it to their eyes. As midwives, we always encourage our home birth, those midwives that do home births, rather, we encourage families to start sunning their babies on the second day, making sure you treat your baby like a house plant. I don't know if y'all can see my house plant over here. Treat your babies like a house plant, and make sure they get sunshine every day to help their bodies metabolize all of that extra bilirubin that's in their bodies and help them to flush it out. And again, that laxative that's in the colostrum will also help them flush out the meconium that's in their body. So they really have to have those poops in the first days to help prevent jaundice. So somebody says, "Let my ass off." He says, "It's the money. I'll see you." That's right, sis. Yes. So we're talking about breast milk and the first phase and stages that it comes in, and then that colostrum milk is perfect for that little tiny belly. The belly is also very rigid, y'all, at birth. It's not so much that the belly muscles stretch per se or grow bigger by 1 week when we expect them to be able to hold like an ounce to an ounce and a half. What really happens is that relaxin hormone kicks in, their body's more abundantly, and the stomach muscles relax, and they can actually hold more as days progress, right? And so it's in perfect harmony with the mature milk starting to come in, like I said, around 72 hours after birth. And then once that milk comes in, you'll notice that the baby's a lot more content. Now, on the first day, many families get so concerned about the baby eating and having enough milk because they don't see it yet. And some moms will ask me, "Oh, I'm 37 weeks or 30 weeks even, and I squeeze my breast and I don't see anything coming out." That does not mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It does not determine how soon your milk will come in. It doesn't determine how much milk that you will make. It doesn't matter if you see drips of milk in the pregnancy. Your body starts producing colostrum by 24 weeks, so that we're told. And this is in the event that you have a preterm baby, the colostrum will be there. Okay. And so that kind of speaks to this idea that's floating around right now about harvesting colostrum. That came up. Shout out to all the sisters that came to the weekend training. We had the advanced doula skills training. That was our first time being in community again, y'all. It felt so good to just be in community. There was also the Malcolm X Fest this weekend here in Atlanta. That was so lively. The weather was beautiful. The entertainment was nice. But I learned a lot even about this wave of people that's encouraging people to do colostrum harvesting in the pregnancy. Now, a couple of questions that did come up in terms of colostrum harvesting. One was, will it stimulate labor? Now, we do use nipple stimulation as a form of induction, right? It's a form of natural childbirth induction. And the reason it works is because when you stimulate the nipples, you stimulate oxytocin in the body. And oxytocin, if anybody's ever heard of Pitocin is the synthetic form of that hormone, oxytocin, that they give you in the hospital in order to encourage contractions or to induce your labor, right? And so one of the natural ways of doing that is using a breast pump. However, or nipple stimulation of any form, whether you're doing it with your fingers or your partner is stimulating your nipples, it can certainly stimulate that oxytocin and it can cause some contractions. However, if you notice, if you've ever received Pitocin, or if you talk to mothers that have had Pitocin, they put it on what's called a continuous drip, and they have it running through their system the entire time, for the most part, or definitely within a set amount of hours that they're trying to induce the labor, right? And this is because Pitocin or oxytocin, that particular hormone, has a very short life in our bodies. It kind of fizzles out of our systems relatively quickly. And so if you want it to sustain long enough in order to actually induce labor, you have to have it consistently pumping through your body. And so if you're trying to colostrum harvest, right, And somebody asking, what is colostrum harvesting? Well, that's when you start trying to express colostrum during the pregnancy. Now, I want to say they start somewhere, and I haven't done my own research, y'all. Like I said, this came up in a conversation at our training, our advanced doula skills training this weekend. And from what the ladies said is they start about 34 weeks or so. Encourage you to do your own research on that. And just the couple of concerns that it drew was the fact that it could potentially induce labor. And so this is one of the things that we understand why it most likely will not. I would imagine, depending on what technique you're using, you would be stimulating for a very short period of time. I would say anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, definitely no more than 30 minutes. If you don't want to induce your own labor, right? You would have to do some significant nipple stimulation to use it to induce labor. Another concern that came up behind colostrum harvesting is that it potentially can make the nipple sore or irritate the breast in some form. I would agree. I think it potentially can. It's going to determine how. It's going to be based on how often the person is doing it. How much? What is their goal? How much milk are they trying to express? I do not think it's. I don't know why people would do this. I really don't. But to each his own. To each his own. Why you feel the need, you want to start harvesting colostrum in your pregnancy. It's almost like, again, it's coming from that fear idea of not supplying enough milk for your baby. And as I mentioned, the first couple of days per feed, your baby only needs about no more than like a couple of teaspoons at most. I think 3 teaspoons is the max that your baby would need um, in the first few days postpartum. After that, your mature milk starts to come in as the muscles in the baby's belly begin to relax and can hold a significantly more amount of breast milk, right? So something to really think about. And if you are trying to give your baby milk through a bottle, any kind of milk, you really want to be familiar with what's called paced bottle feeding, right? I'm gonna give another shout out there to Sterling Loyal Lactation. This young lady is really a strong informational resource. If you're not following her, I encourage you to do so. She gives a lot of good information almost daily, and a whole lot of content on her Instagram page, just centering around just breastfeeding as a whole. But if you want to do bottle feed your baby, look up PACED, PACED, bottle feeding, because it can really help slow your baby down at the bottle. Most people do not know how to bottle feed. We really need to be re-educated on how to give our babies a bottle. And I should have had a bottle and a baby here, but that'll be for the next time, just to demonstrate for you. But ultimately, if you want to give your baby a bottle, you want to try to hold your baby upright as possible. And then you want to hold the bottle parallel to the floor. One of the misnomers that we have is that air is bad, the evil air. The baby's going to get the air in their gut and it's going to cause gas. Well, that's not really how it happens. It happens because you have this baby with these very powerful oral muscles, right? I would argue that the oral muscles are some of the strongest muscles that a newborn baby has, because they have to actively latch onto that breast and stay there and then massage it in such a way that they're able to extract milk. And if you ever try to hand express, you're going to have a newfound respect on how a baby extracts milk from the breast. It is a whole art that they're just born with and they know how to do. Not with their thinking brain, but with their primal brain. Because remember, a baby's thinking brain is very underdeveloped. The neocortex, very underdeveloped at birth. So you want to be sure that when you pace bottle feed your baby, that you hold the baby upright as much as possible. Hold the bottle parallel to the floor, and this will slow the baby down. And then when you insert the nipple into the baby's mouth, now, first of all, you want to use pretty much a regular nipple, right? I would say even those little cheap nipples you get from dollar stores, you don't really need a fancy nipple. You just need a basic slow flow nipple, because the original nipple was designed to go into the baby's mouth at least an inch or so that it could stimulate the baby's sucking reflex. But again, there was never, never's too strong. I have never seen any bottle packages or any of these companies that give tutorials on how to actually bottle feed your baby to prevent the gas, because that's a whole nother market that they can sell you on, right? Oh, buy this bottle because it won't give your baby gas. No, what gives the babies gas, again, is when you hold this baby with these powerful oral sucking muscles in a vertical position, and you have this bottle in in a horizontal position, and you have this bottle in a vertical position, and you're feeding your baby this way. So now this baby has to deal with the powerful sucking muscles in their mouths, gravity that's pulling this fluid down into their bodies, and an adult hand holding it there. This is a lot for a little newborn baby to manage. And so what we find with newborns that are fed this way, you'll notice they hold their eyes wide open and they take huge gulps. It's like they're trying their absolute best to manage the flow of milk coming into their mouths. Versus when you see a baby on the breast, they usually have their eyes closed, right? That's the difference. They're more relaxed and calm at the breast because they get to manage their own flow of milk coming into their bodies than when you have them in this position here. And so another thing that a baby does in this position, and this is for any person that wants to also breastfeed alongside using a bottle, you now go into another controversial topic of nipple confusion. Because what this baby will quickly learn to do in order to survive being fed this way is retract their tongue and put their tongue behind the nipple. And so now if you take that same baby with the retracted tongue and put them onto the breast, now you have pain. And this is what happens a lot of times with women who gives their baby a bottle because they don't think they're making enough milk until their mature milk comes in a few days later. You've already trained this baby to nipple feed and not breastfeed, and you've disoriented their latch. Okay? And so now you have a disoriented latch on the nipple, and this mother is not going to last. If she doesn't receive lactation support quickly, within the next, I would say 2 days, she's going to have beat up, bruised, battled nipples, potentially bleeding nipples. Because nipple feeding hurts, y'all. Nipple feeding hurts. Your baby is meant to breastfeed. That's right, disoriented latch. Your baby is meant to breastfeed. They have to have a wide open mouth and come onto that nipple, that breast, and the nipple should fall deep within their mouths. If they're just latched onto the nipple, that's pain. And that breastfeeding mother will not sustain that for very long. It's going to be very painful to her. And she will want to quit. So somebody said this was very much needed for me. Thank you. Yes, definitely. I mean, we always want to understand how to best alternatively feed our babies. And so another thing that this does, when you hold a baby in this position with the baby in this horizontal reclined position and the bottle held this way, is it causes gastric upset because they tend to take in far more than they are able to, because it deals with the ability to identify when they're full. A lot of times the message don't reach the brain fast enough to let them know they're full. And you know what, y'all? Even when it does, I have watched families I have seen it so many times where they hold that bottle up, they looking at the bottle and not the baby, because this formula costs money or whatever challenges it took them to get this formula. And they looking at that bottle and it doesn't even matter. And they will the baby will be turning their heads and they chasing the head with the baby and making the baby finish that and complete that full bottle. So in many cases, we're overfeeding these babies when you feed them with the bottle. When you sit them upright and you do paced bottle feeding, They get to regulate the flow, and they get to stop feeding when they're full. They understand it. The message has time to reach the brain. Hey, we're full, stop eating. And they will. And it's up to the parent at that point to honor that. And a couple of ways to identify when your baby is hungry and full is with their body language. We look at their hands, y'all. The hands. A baby that's very hungry is going to have very tight, clenched hands, and they're going to pull them to their bodies. They go and they'll just get tight and scream and holler at you, right? You have a little irate baby. But a baby that is full and content, their hands will open. They get kind of floppy. And I always call it the arm lift, the arm test. You lift the arm and it just flops down. And that's one of the ways that you can identify whether or not this baby is full. Okay? And so pay attention to your baby and not the bottle. Someone says, especially the first time around, my nipples were so raw the first 3 days of my first time breastfeeding. Yes, touche. Me too. A lot of this I'm speaking, my eldest child made 24 this year. But a lot of what I'm sharing is so unfortunate. I even experienced with my first, from the hospital sabotage to the nipple confusion, to feeding him wrong with the bottle, all the things. And I still see it to this day, these same challenges. You would think that our hospitals would have better techniques to help us feed our babies. A couple of other things you want to be mindful of is the baby's poop. What goes in must come out, right? And so for those mothers that are those parents that are concerned about whether or not their baby is getting enough, what goes in must come out. So pay attention to the diapers, right? And what is the poop looking like that the baby is releasing? And so we want that poop. It's going to start out looking black. We already said that was the meconium. As the breast milk transitions, it's going to start looking greenish. Okay. And then as the milk begins to continue to transition into just full mature milk, the poop will then start to turn yellow and seedy. All right. And so at any point, if the milk turns from yellow seedy back to green, that can be a concern, especially if you see green poop that is sustaining for several days. Right? That can be a concern. That can either be an allergy in your baby, right? Or this could be that your baby is not getting enough hind milk. So hind milk is the fatty milk that makes the babies gain weight. And this is a concern that we see as well with women that are following this whole 15 minutes on one side, 15 minutes on the other side, or 10-10, whichever rule you think you're following. Watch your baby. Or in your breast, don't watch the clock, because that can cause your baby to be not gain weight sufficiently and take in too much of that fore milk. We want to make sure your baby stays on long enough to get to that hind milk. And again, it's not a time thing. You're paying attention to your baby and your baby's feeding cues. Excuse me, to make sure that they're getting enough of the fat in the milk. The breast milk, y'all, is about 80% water. And it actually changes with the weather. When it's hot like this, like it is in Atlanta, it's getting hot, that breast milk is going to have more water in it. In the wintertime, it's going to have more fat in it. And so you want to pay attention to that too. It was another thought that came up for me while I'm on a roll, y'all. We running out of time. Another thing I wanted to speak to is that in this formula crisis, what we're seeing is homemade milk. I'm sorry, not breast milk. This homemade milk. Okay. And I've had people ask me, what's the best formula recipes? So, dun, dun, dun. Here we go, because I already know my vegan's going to be upset with me. But it is a fact, y'all, that we are mammals. We can all agree that we are mammals, and babies thrive and they do best on mammal's milk. We're talking about a newborn baby. You have to be careful with these plant-based milks that we are creating for these babies, because there is a difference in the lactose. Plant-based milks have a greater potential to upset their digestive system. Some of the things that we have seen with babies, and this is not even just vegans. We're talking about children that truly have allergies to, and it's very few and far between, babies that truly have allergies to some of the proteins in mammals' milk that have to go on to these highly synthetic milks that's like Alimentum or Neutrogenum, I think that's the name of it. Those type of formulas, sometimes they have slower, they hit their growth marks a lot slower because we just, and then you see a lot of digestive upset as well, not only with the animal proteins that they're allergic to for whatever reason, but then also with these fake milks. And let me also speak to soy, because I know that some families want to use a soy milk as an alternative. Y'all remember, soy milk is very high in estrogen. It is very high in estrogen. And so if your baby has a protein allergy, I totally understand. But I will also say that is few and far between. And that's something that needs to be diagnosed and identified by a pediatrician. Babies thrive and do better on mammal's milk. And I'm not saying it has to be cow's milk. I know folks out here that use goat milk, they use sheep milk, they use other human milk, right? But if you're going to create and make your own formula, the first formula your baby has, it really should be a mammal's milk. You will see less digestive upset. Babies that thrive and do best on mammal's milk, they hit those growth curves a lot better and quicker and sooner. At the end of the day, we are mammals. Our babies thrive on mammal's milk until about the age of 2, when we begin to lose the ability to process lactose, which is why so many of us are lactose intolerant. So I hope I didn't offend anybody. I'm just giving y'all the science that was given to us as lactation professionals when they show us all these babies' gut systems on ultrasounds. And when you actually get to see on the ultrasound the different bacteria in the gut and how the body metabolizes these things, you can visually see how these different plant-based milks can irritate their gut systems and cause greater problems later on. And not even later on in life, just in the next few weeks as they're continuously drinking these types of milks. So something to think about, something to consider. I won't stay there long because I know it's highly controversial, but we should know. I love for my folks to make informed decisions over fear-based decisions, right? So that being said, coming up on my hour, I want to raffle off my book, y'all. I mentioned Loving Lactation. About to print this one once again. I had printed it and gave out some copies, or sold a few copies back in October. Thank you for the hearts. And now I'm about to publish it again. I had to go and that was a whole process. As I mentioned at the top of this, one day I'm gonna do a tell-all on the journey to publish this book, and I'm gonna have my editor right next to me. We're gonna sip some wine, and we're gonna tell y'all we're gonna do a tell-all on the challenges of printing this book. But as I mentioned, this book is dedicated to Shifra Yolanda Kadima. She was an IBCLC, an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. She transitioned in 2020 from childbirth-related causes after the birth of her twins. There will only be 200 copies available for this book. As I mentioned, I've already sold 50 copies, so another 150. It is an exclusive edition book, right? After I print these next 150 copies, I will not print any more of this book. I am dedicating my Loving Lactation series and making it a collector's edition. Every time I reprint, it's going to have a different dedication to another mother who has transitioned who has transitioned due to maternal death. Tongue twist. I think I didn't really want to say that, but it had to come out. So that will be what the book is dedicated to. My book definitely takes a stance on the importance of breastfeeding, and not so much breast is best. We dive in, we dive deep, y'all. Y'all know me. I love the science. I'll go in and I tell you why was formula even created in the first place, right? Believe it or not, it had to do with folks that just didn't know that milk could spoil, if you could believe it. I don't even have to say who that was. They didn't know that milk could spoil, and they was out here giving their babies spoiled milk. Do your research. And so formula companies were birthed to try to help these families keep from, hurting these babies, giving them sour milk, right? That's one of the reasons why formula was lifted up. And so I also have in here the do's and don'ts of breastfeeding, right? Which is a really dope chapter because it goes into certain things that's allowed. Believe it or not, a lot of things are allowed, y'all. Even cannabis is allowed with breastfeeding. I don't push it. However, I just want you to know a lot of things are allowed. Many women think that they can't take like antibiotics or certain other medications if they're breastfeeding, and they still believe in the pumping and dumping. That can't be further than the truth. There are only a few pharmaceutical drugs that aren't allowed with breastfeeding. Most street drugs are not either, because they will cross over into the milk, right? Alcohol, you can drink and breastfeed. We don't want you to be lushing it up, right? However, alcohol is allowed with breastfeeding. So there's a lot more that's allowed with breastfeeding than with being pregnant, believe it or not. We're always so cautious, a lot of people are, that are not knowledgeable about what they can have with breast, and that can be a barrier. I've had people tell me, I want to go back and smoke my weed, so I'm not breastfeeding. Well, do your homework, because if you choosing a good quality herb, right? Because weed is an herb, one that's not laced with a whole bunch of trash, it's allowed, right? And it's all about your parenting at that point. Another section in here that I think that people will find very helpful is the 19 myths that dispelling the 19 myths about breastfeeding, right? I go into 19 different topics that many people have come to me about breastfeeding. Family, I appreciate y'all so much out there. We're going to get over this crisis as we do all others. Don't water down your formula, families. If you got to make you a plant-based milk, do what you got to do, right? Do what you got to do to help this baby thrive. But ultimately, if you got to make you an old-fashioned homemade, my dad's formula was, and I'm not telling nobody to make this, right? My disclaimer. But my father is 74, 73, some one of them. And his formula was pet milk and Karo syrup. This man is still alive. My mother's formula was powdered milk and molasses. South Alabama, y'all. Selma and Ozark. And they are still alive. So do what you gotta do. Do what you gotta do. But when we know better, we truly do better. As I always say, I hope I said something this evening that you found valuable. I thank you for sharing your time with me. You could have been anywhere else doing anything else, but you decided to share that time with me this evening. Much love and light to all of you. And until next time, peace and blessings.